Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Joe Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Joe Braid, and this is the final episode in our Music, Mental Health and Wellbeing series. Today, we're talking about finding your inner harmony. So, over the past 2 weeks, we've explored the rhythm of recovery and learned to tune our nervous systems. And today, we're going straight to the heart of sustainable well-being, knowing that true wellness comes from within, like finding the perfect harmony that resonates from your very core. So in music, harmony isn't about perfection. It's about different notes coming together to create something beautiful and whole. And the same is true for your inner world. Finding your inner harmony means integrating all parts of yourself, your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your needs, and your boundaries into a coherent, authentic whole. And it isn't about having it all figured out. Wow, I don't know when that day is going to turn up. It's about creating an inner environment where you can be honest with yourself, trust your own experience, and reach out for support when you need it. Before we can find that harmony, I really want to address something that's incredibly common in healthcare and beyond, and that is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness happens when we've repeatedly faced situations that we couldn't control. So lots of these occur on the regular. Maybe it's understaffing, maybe it's impossible patient loads, or systemic issues that never seem to change. Remember those 3 logons it takes to get into the patient record that you're trying to update the notes? Over time, we start to believe that our actions don't matter, that we cannot influence our circumstances, even when we may actually have more influence than we realize. And here's how this can look. You stop speaking up about problems because nothing changes anyway. You don't apply for that position because they never choose people like me, or you don't set a boundary because it won't make a difference. And the devastating thing about learned helplessness is that it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we stop trying, we stop discovering where we actually do have power and influence. So this is why inner safety is so crucial. It's like your foundation note, the baseline that everything else builds upon. Inner safety means you can have a thought or a feeling without immediately judging it as wrong or dangerous. I've talked about the inner critic before, and that voice in our heads can be so strong and so quick to judge. It's almost like it's been trained that way. It means you can notice when you're struggling without adding a layer of shame about the struggle itself. So when you have inner safety, you're not constantly monitoring yourself for signs of weakness or failure. You can recognize learned helplessness patterns without judging yourself for having developed them. And you understand these patterns made sense given what you experienced. So this is great for healthcare professionals who have been trained to have all the answers, to be strong, to never show uncertainty. And this is how the voice of inner safety might sound. It's okay not to know. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And it's okay to be human. It's okay to start reclaiming your power one small step at a time. And that's often the way I'd invite you to get started with something is, what is the next small step you can take towards shifting things for yourself, towards growing that inner safety? Next, we're going on to inner trust. It's like a guiding melody. It's what helps you navigate decisions. Decision-making can be hard when you're in burnout. It gets easier as you emerge from burnout. And you can also navigate relationships with confidence, and it's a real antidote to learned helplessness. Inner trust means believing that your feelings are valid information. Nobody can say you're wrong for having a feeling, whatever your feeling is. Remember that 50-50 that I talked about in the first episode of this series? Your needs matter, and your perspective has real value. It means trusting your body when it tells you something doesn't feel right, even if you can't logically explain why. And when you've experienced learned helplessness, Rebuilding inner trust happens gradually. You start small. Here are some examples. Maybe you speak up in one meeting, or you set one boundary, or you apply for one opportunity. Each time you act and see that your actions have an impact, you rebuild the neural pathways of agency and empowerment. Now let me share something personal about asking for help. Something I used to find incredibly difficult, especially coming from a place of learned helplessness. For years, I really operated under the belief that asking for help was pointless because either people were too busy to help, or they didn't have availability, they didn't want to help, or the system wouldn't change anyway. I thought I should be able to figure everything out on my own, and if I couldn't, well, that just proved that nothing could be done. But just recently, I was at a conference and I found myself in conversation with a colleague whose work I deeply respect. Instead of staying in my old pattern of thinking, they're too busy or why would they want to help me, I took a deep breath and I said, would you consider being a mentor to me? I would really value your guidance. And you know what happened? They said yes. Not only that, but they seemed genuinely pleased to be asked. It was such a good move and one of the best professional decisions I've made in a long time. What I realized is that asking for help isn't about admitting inadequacy. It's about recognizing that growth happens in relationship. It's about understanding that we're all interconnected, and seeking guidance is actually a sign of wisdom, not weakness. And more importantly, we're talking about agency, choosing to reach out instead of staying stuck. So here's what I've learned. Asking for help requires both vulnerability and strength. It requires the vulnerability to admit you don't have all the answers and the strength to reach out despite the discomfort. It also requires breaking through learned helplessness patterns that tell you it won't work anyway. And when you can hold both of these, the vulnerability and the strength, you create a kind of inner harmony. You're not trying to be invulnerable and you're not collapsing into helplessness. You're finding the middle path where you can be both capable and open to support. And the final 2 points I've got for you are around awareness and reflection, really personal parts to this journey. And they're like your inner conductor. They help orchestrate all the different parts of your experience into something coherent and meaningful. So how might you do this? I'd suggest regularly checking in with yourself. How am I really doing? What do I need right now? Where am I operating from learned helplessness, and where do I actually have more power than I'm using? When you practice awareness and reflection, you start to distinguish between situations where you truly have no control and situations where you've just stopped trying because of past experiences. And this is so crucial for anyone on a burnout recovery journey. So, how do you cultivate this inner harmony while breaking free from learned helplessness? I'd suggest you start with small moments of inner safety. When you notice thoughts like, nothing I do matters, respond with some curiosity. Is that really true in this specific situation, or is that an old pattern? Practice growing your inner trust by taking small actions and noticing the results you create. Maybe you speak up about an issue, set a boundary, or reach out. Pay attention to what happens, because you'll often discover you've got more influence than you thought you did. And practice asking for help as an act of reclaiming your power. Each time you reach out, you're saying, I believe change is possible and I'm willing to take action to create it. So here's the beautiful thing about finding your inner harmony and breaking free from that learned helplessness. It doesn't just benefit you. When you're in your inner safety zone and you've got that inner trust backing you up, and when you're willing to ask for help, you create space for the others to do the same. I had a doctor who I worked with last year during one of my locum roles reach out this week asking for a recommendation for a job he's applying for this year. And I'm so thrilled that he did that. And I'm more than delighted to write a recommendation for him. And great to see that flow on through the collective who we know over the months and the years. and modeling what it looks like to move from helplessness to empowerment. And you show that it's possible to acknowledge systemic changes while still claiming your personal agency within them. So this is the end of the 3-part series around music, mental health, and well-being. We've explored the rhythm of recovery, learned to tune into wellness, and discovered how to find your inner harmony by breaking free from learned helplessness. I hope you've got a lot of value out of these 3 episodes. And I wanted to remind you that early in September, I will have a beautiful conversation with Linda Manwaring, local singer-songwriter, who was my co-host for doing the music, mental health and wellbeing event that we were going to do here in Orange. So stay tuned for the podcast dropping in September around the time of Are You OK Day. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey. Keep practicing, keep growing, and keep trusting the wisdom and the agency that lives within you. I'll catch up with you again next week. Thanks for listening to this episode. Schedule a 60-minute power hour with me and leave with relief, decisions made, and clear next steps. Or send me an email for a speaking inquiry. All information is available at drjobraid.com with links in the show notes.